Welcome, T-Birds. Happy Friday. Welcome from Southern Utah University, the campus here in Cedar City, Utah. My name is Tad Brinkerhoff. I'm the Associate Vice President for Grad and Online, and we're excited to welcome you to our Friday Career Connection we do every Friday. Our goal with this podcast slash Zoom is to really hear from alumni that have had great success in their career and learn what worked for them and also to learn about the industry that they're working in. So we're super excited today to feature our aviation department and alum Chris Powell, who was a graduate of the aviation program. And as I was sharing with Chris earlier, our president, Mindy Benson, announced this week that SUU trains over 10% of the helicopter pilots in the United States, which is a kudo to the program that's here. So we're super excited to welcome Chris Powell, who's is calling in from Maui, Hawaii. And so we're going to turn the time over to Chris to tell us about his journey from Tennessee to Texas to Hawaii and to Utah and his career in aviation, and also give us some insights into the aviation industry and where we stand today. And then, as always, feel free to drop questions into the chat. I'll be asking questions as well. So, Chris, tell us about your journey in the aviation world.
Well, you touched on it a little bit. I'm originally from a small town in Tennessee, and when I was elementary school, we moved from Tennessee to Houston, Texas, which was quite a change, and uh, went through junior high, some elementary, junior high, and high school there. And as I was going through high school, uh, didn't really have a direction. Didn't know what I wanted to do. It's funny. A lot of schools have great career counselors, and I don't think I ever even met my career counselor. But I'd gotten a job right out of high school and was making good money doing what I did with my dad growing up, and that's working in HVAC, they call it now. But it wasn't really going anywhere, and I couldn't see myself doing it. So one day on the drive back from a job, I saw a recruiter and started talking with him. And I talked to all the different recruiters, and the Air Force was the most attractive to me. So when I joined the Air Force in 1983, the plan was to just go in and do 3 or 4 years and then get out. Because by that time, I'd hope I'd figured out what I really wanted to do. Um, but when you go into the military, at least in the Air Force, they offer you what they call dream sheets. And a dream sheet is basically where you'd like to be stationed. And, I'm from Texas, so I was like, I'd like to stay in Texas or go to Florida maybe. And one of the things I've discovered throughout my career is for me, it's been often a dichotomy because when I want to do one thing, I start moving towards it and then I end up going in a completely different direction. So I put in for Houston or for Texas and Florida, and they sent me to a place called the United Kingdom, working with the Royal Air Force. And at the time, it's funny, I still remember the day when they said I was going to Royal Air Force Base, Upper Heyford, United Kingdom. My initial thought was, where's the United Kingdom? Because I just joined the Air Force. So I ended up spending 2 years in England, just outside of Cambridge, and it was awesome. And then from there, they sent me to Oahu, Hawaii. So that's where I got my first taste of Hawaii. And I didn't really like the job that I had, but my mom and dad always told me if you're going to do something, might as well do it good or great. So I did, I think, fairly well and got kind of promoted along with everybody else. But I was 4 years in, and I'd lived in England and lived in Hawaii, and I had the opportunity to start flying. So I became a boom operator in the Air Force, and I'd flown for a few years, got to travel the world when Desert Storm kicked off, 1991. So that was my first trip pretty much to the Middle East. And I spent from 1990 all the way to 2013 in and out of the Middle East pretty much the rest of my career. So I was in a couple of different airframes. I was in the KC-135, which is getting a lot of attention right now because we lost one recently over in Iran. And then I was in the KC-10, but during that time I also did some special duty stuff where I got to deploy and do some stuff on the ground. And one of the things I quickly discovered, being in those communities, is, you know, as a young aviation guy, it was always about the next trip and where you could go. Everybody wanted to go to the attractive places. And then you'd go on these trips, and I quickly discovered it was more important to go places with people that I enjoyed being with than the location that I was going to. So over time, I learned that I would rather go to the middle of the desert in the summer and work with good people than it was to go to Hawaii, But I was very fortunate in my career. I was always surrounded with really good people who pushed me further than I thought I could ever do. And one of the things I enjoyed about the Air Force was the fact that you'd spend 2 or 3 years learning a part of a job really well. And then once you got good at it, they'd have you do something else. And so it has, for me, it's created what I consider a lifelong student. So I've always wanted to learn different things, and I'm not afraid to start over from the bottom. It's one of the things that it kind of created in me. And so when I retired, ended up spending 30 years in the Air Force. And when I retired, I knew I wanted to fly helicopters. The shirt that I'm wearing, I like to always wear red on Friday because red in the military stands for remember everyone that's deployed, which I think is important right now because we got a lot of servicemen and women overseas. But this is also the shirt that was made famous on Magnum PI.
That's
And
right.
yeah, so Tom Selleck used to wear a shirt like this. And when I was stationed there, we actually met him a few times. He was running around the island filming Magnum. But when I saw his helicopter flying around, I was like, that's something I want to do one day. And I never imagined that I would come back to Hawaii and fly helicopters. So after I'd retired from the Air Force, again, all I knew was that I wanted to do something in the outside, and I'd really like to fly helicopters. And so I started doing research over the different helicopter programs that were out there, and SUU kept bubbling back up, and they had a new program that was starting. It was actually part of Upper Limit Aviation, and then it eventually grew into where Southern Utah University kind of enveloped Upper Limit Aviation, and I got to be at the beginning. I think I was in the third class. I arrived on New Year's Eve, 2013, in Cedar City, and met Julie and Mike Maurer in the aviation department, and they welcomed me with open arms. It was just a great welcoming. And then I went through the program in about 16 months. And again, one of the things I think is funny, because when I went into the Air Force, another reason I went into the Air Force, because I really didn't want to go to school. I'd had 12 years of going to school, and I wasn't that great in school. I was average. But when I got out of the Air Force, I told you earlier, I was surrounded with people who would always push me in a direction to grow me. And I was fortunate to be surrounded by a handful of really great guys in the boom operator community. And one of them said, hey, let's start going to school. Let's start. So while I was in the Air Force, we did night school. And by the time I left the Air Force, I ended up with having 3 different degrees. And then I ran into Southern Utah University, and I went there to use the GI Bill and to learn to fly helicopters, which is, again, something I really wanted to do. And I had to pick a degree program, and I discovered they had an outdoor recreation degree, which I thought if they had had that when I was in high school, I'd have probably done that. But so I ended up getting a BIS degree in outdoor recreation and hospitality management, um, and spent about 16, 18 months there. Left there for a job up in Alaska. It was a sightseeing job up there. Um, uh, for me, it didn't last that long, just because the leadership of that place wasn't what it wasn't the best. And so for the next couple of years, I actually did several different jobs in the helicopter industry, and it's a very small community, and it's funny because going through the program at SU, everybody's trying to figure out where you want to go in the helicopter industry because there's a lot of different lanes. And if you'd told me that I'd end up in flying tours in Hawaii, I would have never believed it because I never considered being a tour pilot. And then when I ended up getting this job out here in Hawaii, I couldn't figure out why I hadn't done it from the very beginning. So it's some of the best flying in the world, most beautiful place, and flying excellent machines. So,
Chris,
um,
Chris, how did
yeah.
you get that job in Hawaii? What was the key?
Well, when I talked about being surrounded by good people and then going on trips with good people make the trips better, no matter what type of environment you're in. A good friend of mine, who I'm still he lives out in Hawaii now, named Cody Gray. He was going through the program with me. We were actually in the same class together, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know you're from Hawaii. Are you interested in coming back out and flying tours?" And I checked my calendar and I said, "When do you want me there?" So I ended up. So it was a friend that recommended the job, and he worked for Sunshine Helicopters out here in Hawaii, and I came to Hawaii and got trained. And within 2 weeks of my arrival here, the big eruption in Leilani on the Big Island that looked like it was swallowing the whole island happened, and I was in a helicopter over the top of it every day for about 9 months. So it was a good timing on my part, I think. But it was a big introduction into island flying because it's a lot different here than a lot of places. So it was a friend that got me into this job. And some of the other jobs that I'd had before coming out here, again, it was friends that were already out in the industry and kind of reached out and said something. So yeah,
So your network made a difference.
it did. It did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean,
Well,
I'm here
Chris,
today because of Taylor. We had a couple of classes together and she reached out and, said, "Hey, you want to chat?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know what I have to say, but sure."
oh, well, this has been fascinating. We've got some questions already coming in, and it sounds like Vincent is in the program. So he's got a couple of questions. Let's start with the first one. He's asking to have you tell us about how you exactly trace back registrations to find out the MD 500 at your company was the same one from Magnum PI.
Oh,
That
it wasn't. Yeah, I really wanted to fly an MD 500, and that particular aircraft is a little difficult to get into. There are some jobs out there. Like if you really want to get into the MD 500, you can go out and fly tuna boats, and they take very inexperienced pilots, and it's a very difficult environment. It's normally like a 12-month contract, and they place you on a boat that uh, sails around the Pacific hunting for tuna. And a lot of times on that boat, you're there's very few people who speak English on the boat. And if you're on a new boat, it's very fortunate. If you have a good cook, it's very fortunate. But then there's the other extreme. So there's not a lot of control, but it's a way to build experience and get time in the MD 500. So,
okay. Thank you. So the next question from Vincent. Vincent, thank you for your questions. He's wondering, where did you go right after the program? He says that many of us are finishing currently and some struggle to find gigs. Got any advice? And for example, he said many become seasonal tour pilots or do CF2
C-
work.
CFI, CFII.
CFII, you're right. SU
Yep.
Aviation recently had 50 people interview for 5 spots. So
Yeah.
it sounds
Yeah.
like, what's the key to getting a job out of the SUU program?
Well, as a student, that's kind of your goal is, hopefully you can become a flight instructor at the school that you trained at. But although the numbers weren't as large, the percentage was about the same when I was going through. And I was fortunate to get hired as a CFII there at SUU to build up my flight instruction time and again, build time in the aircraft. Um, so I, I would say it's part of the relationship building piece. So the relationship building that you're working on while you're a student, getting to know the other instructors that are teaching you. Do you want to be the type of person that they want to work with in the future to begin with? Because if you're a difficult student, they're not going to want to work with you once you're qualified to work with you. So, but even in sometimes when you're the perfect student, if there's not an opportunity, uh, yeah, there's no chance for you to get hired. So from that point, just going out and looking out in the industry and trying to get on, it's just like any other job. You put out lots of applications and you're hoping for the opportunity to fly. And but one of the things to consider is when you accept some of those applications, you really don't know much about them or the people unless I know somebody that works there. And, in my case, I've worked for a couple of different companies that once I got there, I didn't like where it was. I didn't like the environment. I really didn't like the people. And for me, it's a little bit different. Being in the military for so long, uh, I know what I perceive to be a good and safe environment to work in. And there are companies out there that really put the dollar ahead of the people. And it's important to watch that, but just taking advantage of trying to get a job and maybe something that you don't really want to do or do long term to build up that experience. So yeah, it's very interesting. Each one of for if there's any other helicopter pilots listening right now on this, they're the way how they got to where they are is completely different than my way. It's each one of us kind of have to figure out how to get to the next level. Um, but yeah, but
So Chris,
yeah.
Chris, if you were in the hiring, if you were hiring someone for seasonal tour pilots, you had 50 people, how would you narrow it down to the top five? What criteria would you be looking at? Would it be flying time? Would it be personality? Would it be technical expertise, degree?
Well, yeah. There's a few things that are must, and when they have flying time requirements, it doesn't matter how good a person you are or what kind of personality you have. If you don't meet those minimum requirements just to get your foot in the door, it doesn't matter. You'll never get you'll never get your foot in the door. So you have to you have to be able to get the flight time in order to just be able to compete. And then once you meet that flight time, that's when you are really working to how can I separate myself from the others. And again, it's very unique. It's has a lot to do with knowing who you're interviewing with. What are the skills that you have to think would they desire? As a tour pilot, if you don't like to talk to people or entertain, you're probably not going to do that well. And if you're interviewing and they can tell that your heart's really not in it, I think that's going to make a big difference. So, yeah, being very flexible. But like I said, my whole career has been a dichotomy where I head in one direction and end up going in the exact opposite direction, but it's led to success for me. Um,
Were
yeah,
those, Chris, were those intentional decisions or did they just, or is that happenstance?
the which decisions?
Well, any decision throughout your career, is there
Uh,
did you have an intentional path?
uh, I did, but I think the difference um, for me is taking action, doing something. You know, I've heard a lot of people talk about opportunity and they never get the opportunity to do anything. And then when the opportunity comes, they might not be prepared. Being prepared when the opportunity arises, I think, is what's important. Because if you think that when the opportunity is there, you can now start preparing, you're already behind the eight ball. Um, so I think it's really important to be prepared. For me, it was trying to be prepared for a number of different things. And then when one opened up, I was ready to move in that direction. So, and just again, for me personally, I really wanted to do some EMS flying, emergency services, uh, doing the medevac stuff. And then when I got into it, I didn't like it.
Hmm.
As a pilot, especially as a tour pilot, when I meet people, they're having a great day, and I make it even better by getting to show off what I'm showing off. And in the EMS community, I meet people on their worst day.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's really, what is it? What gives me the joy of it? Um, I have a lot of friends that are in the utility world, and they work long, hard hours, and they're building up, good flight time and good experience. Um, and if that's what you want, if that's what you see as success, um, I mean, yeah, it's really what do you get the enjoyment out of? Um, when I was in the military, I had I had some great mentors, and I didn't really see them as mentors at the time. I just saw them as bosses or friends. And one of the things that they told me, because when you are in the military, you have a commitment for a certain amount of time, and then at the end of that time, you stay in or you get out. And they told me that um, when and everybody knows when your time is coming up to do one or the other. And they said never be financially strapped to where when it's time to either reenlist, to stay in, or to get out. Don't do it because you're financially strapped. Don't do it because you have to. Do it because you want to stay in. And my whole career, I did that. So every 4 years, I made sure that financially, if I wanted to get out at the next jumping off point, I could. And for me, every 4 years, I was in a position and I absolutely loved what I was doing. So I moved forward. And, before I knew it, it was 30 years. For me, it literally flew by. Uh, uh, yeah, it was. So I think just being prepared is extremely important, and not taking action when you have that opportunity. Because if you wait for the opportunity, you might not be prepared for that to happen.
Yeah. That's great advice. Okay, we've got two questions from Shannon. She wants to know about one lesson from aviation that applies to life outside the cockpit.
Hmm. Thanks. Good question. Um, a life lesson. Well, you know, being in the military and even as a pilot, uh, my job is to serve others. Um, and yeah, I'm the one that's kind of leading it. But if, I'm either serving my guests that fly with me now, or I served my bosses, or I serve my teammates. I think that's really important when you're really focused on you. even when you reach the point that you think you've succeeded, it might be a hollow success. For me, it was, when I start feeling sorry for myself, I try to go out and do something for somebody else. That gives me satisfaction. That keeps me from feeling sorry about myself. Um, yeah, just being servant minded, no matter what capacity that's in, whether it's the guys that you're working with at the end of the long line down below you, or it's the boss up above you, or the people that are sitting in the cockpit with you. Is yeah, just serving those around you.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Okay, it's time for a snap poll. Here's the snap poll. Chris has lived in a lot of different places, including overseas. Would you be interested in working overseas? And if so, what area of the world or what specific country would you want to work? So if you can just drop that into the chat in the next 30 seconds. So if you don't want to live overseas, you just say no. If you're interested in living overseas, put yes and then give us the region or the specific country if you know what the specific country. Someone wrote INK. I don't know, what does that mean? Scandinavia. Niels wants to work in Scandinavia.
So Niels is a flight instructor of mine at Southern Utah University.
Oh,
He was
nice.
a he was a yeah, and he is from that part of the world, and I've gotten to work with him at several different places since we left SU together. And yeah, he just relocated back to Michigan after living in Hawaii. But yeah,
Oh, that's fun. So Vincent's anywhere. He'll go anywhere and work for a company that cares about safety and people. We're going to talk about safety in just a minute. Jonathan says yes, Japan or Western Europe, Spain, England, Ireland, and Jeanette is coming for your job in Hawaii, Chris. Taylor is looking at South America, but she would be open. That's fantastic. Yeah, I've lived in South America and Japan and absolutely loved my time in both places. Courtney is saying Switzerland. Okay, that's great. Let's talk about the safety issue for a minute. So there have been some high profile accidents in helicopters. There was one in New York a couple of years ago where a family, and I think the pilot was an SUU alum, if I'm
he
not
was.
mistaken.
He was. Yep.
Yeah, and this family was killed. And then you also have, helicopter flights out of Vegas, and they go into the Grand Canyon, and every once in a while we hear about an accident. Talk to us about the safety of being a helicopter pilot. Is it overrated statistically? What is the danger level, and how do you deal with that psychologically?
Well, again, these are just my personal thoughts. One of the things that you have to be careful of when you start working for different companies is how do they view safety? What is their perspective on it? There and I think a lot of times good people are led down the wrong path in that perspective, thinking that those above them are looking out for their safety, and in reality, they're not. They're looking at the bottom line. How much money are they going to be able to make? And just an example in the tour industry, which I work for a great company, Blue Hawaiian Helicopters, and weather is a challenge here. We've got some big storms that just blew through, and they're getting ready to come back again and hit us again. And you would think that your company would say, hey, yeah, today's not a good day to fly, but they don't. They let you decide whether you should go fly. And, for me, in the tour industry, and this kind of goes along with a saying that I heard many years ago. They said it's always better to be on the ground wishing you were flying than flying wishing you were on the ground. And, I think as aviators, we often push ourselves a little too much sometimes. And I've had that feeling where I was flying and wishing I was on the ground, but it was only once in that particular environment. So I think it's real important to kind of be able to know how much risk you're willing to take. And it boils down to a risk versus reward thing. And, for a tour pilot, one of the things that they discuss is, again, weather related. And Blue Hawaii helicopters, they will never criticize you for canceling for weather, ever. And, you have winds, you have visibility issues. Maybe it's not just high winds, but it's the direction of the wind based on where you're flying. So it's really challenging because as a young aviator, we just want to fly, fly, fly. Even when the weather appears to be deteriorating, or maybe the aircraft everything is not working like it's supposed to, but you decide to push it. And in this business, mistakes are usually very costly. I often think of the Kobe Bryant incident, when,
Yeah.
he passed away in a helicopter outside of LA, and they were going to a basketball game, and very experienced pilot, great aircraft, and he had many opportunities to put it on the ground, but he didn't. He chose to try to push, and it cost. It was so in the aviation community, they talk about a chain of events, and if you can break one of those chains, in that one of the links in the chain that's headed toward that event, the event won't happen. And just taking the opportunity to really think, and why am I doing this? I
Yeah.
think it's very important. And it can be anything from weather to the aircraft, how uh, is it ready to fly? And even how do you feel? Do you feel good to go fly? Um, because all of those things, again, have led to many disasters. So yeah,
Chris, are you salary or are you compensated by the number of flights? And does that play
it
into
does. That's a good thing. That's a good thing to talk about. It depends on the company. So there are some companies that you get paid per flight hour. So if you're not flying, you're not earning money.
Mm,
And I can tell you, if you're going on a helicopter tour, finding that out, the pilots just get paid by the hour is important, because if the weather is iffy and you fly with a pilot, he could be flying because he wants to earn a buck.
yeah.
Um, the the company that I fly with, they're a mixture. So we get paid to show up, and then we get a bump to fly. So even though there's not as big a pressure to fly financially, there is that out there. Um, so, and for me, again, if I don't fly a tour, they can come back.
Yeah.
But as a tour pilot, you have a family that's been in Hawaii for 2 weeks, and they leave tonight, and they want you to take them flying now, or they don't fly. And it's like, when you come back to Hawaii, I'll be more than happy to fly you. But
Are you making that decision or is someone
yes,
above you making that? You're
no,
making the decision.
the pilots, well, at my company, the pilots make the decision. And our leadership, our chief pilot, the director of operations, they are 100% behind the decision that we make.
Yeah.
So,
So that accident in New York, what the media reported is that the helicopter was under service. It hadn't been serviced appropriately. Is that your understanding, or do you agree
yeah,
with that assessment?
I'm familiar with it. And it looked like there was some structural fatigue that led to the accident. Uh, but I'm not really sure. And if that is the case, that's where you have to have faith in your company and that the inspections are being done right, like they're supposed to. Um, yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, we have even airliners, we have all kinds of aircraft that fly, and sometimes there's just failure. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
that's what I remember in 1990. Uh, I was assigned to a unit. I did air refueling, and I was assigned to unit where the school for the B-1 bomber was at our base. So our primary responsibility was the B-1 bomber and to get their students through the program so they could go and become operational at their next base. Well, in December of 1990, they discovered a crack in like the spine of the B-1 bomber, and it grounded the whole fleet.
Mm.
And so it was something that was discovered. And fortunately, it wasn't discovered with the cost of blood. They discovered it in maintenance, but that's great maintenance. Fortunately for me, it led to the fact that the B-1s were grounded. We then deployed for Desert Storm. So, and again, is that good or bad? But as an aviator in the military, you always train, to do your mission. And it was nice to be able to actually go out and do the mission instead of just training, if that makes any sense. So,
Yeah, it does. Chris, can you give us an assessment of the aviation industry today? I know that's a broad question. And then what does the future look like, both from inside the military and outside the military, in the next 5 to 10 years in the aviation industry?
yeah. Well, if from my perspective, and it goes with even in the military, but it's also outside the military, there's always a sine wave. There's not enough pilots, there's too many pilots, not enough pilots, too many pilots. And that's just the way aviation is. And again, timing can be everything for you as a pilot or a crew member and what job that is available. And that's why I think it's so important that you do everything you can be prepared so that when an opportunity arises, that you can step up and at least get your foot in the door to compete for that opportunity. I think aviation is just like it's been for years. I think it's for pilots, I think it's bright out there. But just because, we might end up being a pilot shortage, it doesn't mean that, in 6 months, we're going to be in an overage again. In the tour pilot helicopter industry, in the tourism business side of it, before the Kobe Bryant event, life was good. But then afterwards, a lot of the tour pilots were let go because people didn't feel safe flying in helicopters just because of a single event. So you can never choose when kind of stuff like that happens. But one of the things that I also see coming on, and we still don't know how that's going to affect the industry, but is unmanned vehicles. The drones, like a lot, there are
Yeah.
jobs in helicopters where there's pilots flying helicopters filming stuff. With AI, can they do that without a pilot in the seat? It's
Yeah,
very interesting.
I just read last night there was a billionaire that just invested in autonomous airplanes. I'd
Yeah,
never heard of that before, but I
yeah,
guess it's a thing.
yeah. I don't know if I will ever climb into an aircraft where there's not a human being at the controls.
I'm, I'm
But
with you.
that's just me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
I
yeah,
get,
there's always going to be peaks and valleys in the industry. Just like for the uh, aviation students that want to get a job as an instructor, there's going to be peaks and valleys at that. When I was an instructor, there'd be one time when there was only one helicopter instructor position open, and then the very next cycle there were six positions open. So, yeah, not to get discouraged, but to keep looking for opportunities to fly. I've gotten to fly in during COVID. The tour industry was shut down, flying helicopters. So I went and did some agriculture flying in helicopters, which I never thought I would do that, but it was a great learning experience because a lot of the agriculture flying is in very small helicopters, kind of what they have at SUU, R-22s, and I went from flying EC-130s here in Hawaii and went back to Texas and flew an R-22 flying 3 feet over rice fields, for several months, seeding rice production. So just keeping an eye open for opportunities. And it's not something that I look to do, but when the opportunity came, I jumped at it, and it was very rewarding flying. I
Hmm.
worked hard, just a few hours a day, but it was because of the crop that we were growing or working with. But it was a good season. And, again, it's dichotomy. I was a tour pilot, and here I was, looking at doing some agricultural work in an R-22, which again is like the first training helicopter that a lot of people fly in. So
Was that in Hawaii?
no, I was in Texas. I went back to Texas and
How,
flew the
how did you
rice field.
find how did you find that job?
A friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's not a central, like if I want to fly helicopters, not a central place where
No.
jobs are posted. It's very network focused.
Yeah. And, again, building those relationships and being prepared when those opportunities arise. Uh, I got my EMS job because of one of the flight instructors, and he ended up marrying one of the administrative women that was at SUU. And when the EMS job came open, it was through him that I got my
Okay.
EMS job.
It,
So yeah,
it sounds like I mean, you've worked all over the world, all over the United States. So you've had to adapt to different locations.
yeah.
How have you done that? Is that your personality? Because some people that would seem overwhelming, like moving to a new state or a new country. How have you been able to adapt? It sounds like you've enjoyed it, you've adapted well. Is that based on your extroverted personality, or how did
Well,
you learn to cope with the new scenarios?
I think it's funny because I consider myself an introvert, but I can
Oh, really?
I can be an extrovert. As a tour pilot, I can connect with people, and the but I think to answer your question, I think you just have to be open. I wanted to go to Texas and Florida, and I went to England and made the best of it and absolutely loved it. I've got friends from that time period, and that was 83 to 85 that I'm still friends with.
Yeah.
And when they come to Hawaii, I hang out with them, and they were much younger. We were 18 years old living in England, and now they're a little bit older, and we go out on the boat and go swim with the whales out here. So yeah, you have to be open. Like I said, oftentimes whenever I started something, I ended up going a completely different direction. Even coming to Hawaii, I showed up here in Hawaii with 2 bags in my hand, you know, uh, and it's turned out great. I absolutely love what
Yeah.
I get to do out here.
You're a brave person. Chris, how old were you when you went back to school to get your pilot's license?
Let's see. Uh, I was 50 years old when I went to SU.
So what's your
Yeah,
advice to someone who's in their 50s who's contemplating going back to school? Is it worth it?
absolutely do it. I meet people out here that fly with me, and they're so interested in do it. And I said, your only regret typically is when you regret that you didn't do it earlier.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Jonathan just posted he turns 50 in about 3 weeks. And Jonathan, you're in a master's program, right?
Yeah, I'm actually doing a double master's right now.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so impressive. That's
And are
great.
you flying?
No, I'm getting my MBA and then a master's in data analytics.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, one of the things I think I said at the beginning is uh, one of the things that the Air Force taught me, again, every 2 or 3 years, you're doing a new job. And some people's ego really, like when I started flying helicopters, I was at the bottom of the barrel again, bottom of the pecking order. Uh, but I just went with it, and being able to start over again. The times in the Air Force when I went from one job to the next, I had to start over from the very beginning because I had very little experience other than worldly experience, but as far as the job or whatever I was doing. And, one of the things, uh, number one, any one of us, we should never feel entitled. Nobody owes us anything. And that's throughout life. Nobody owes us anything. And to get to where you maybe want to, what you say your goal as, you're going to have to work hard. There are no shortcuts at all. You're going to have to work hard. And there are times when you're going to have to do stuff that you don't enjoy doing. And, I was surrounded with several boom operators. And I had a great professor. He was actually one of our aircraft commanders in the KC-10, but he taught at Embry-Riddle University. And he said, you know, as a professor at this university, I'm going to provide you with a smorgasbord of information. And your goal is to go in and pick out the different pieces of the smorgasbords that apply and work for you. And he said, no matter what situation you're in, you have to be able to adapt. And he said, there's going to be times, no matter where you are in life, that, and I don't mean to cuss, but I'm going to use his phrases. He said, it's your time to take a bite of the shit sandwich. And he said, when it's your time to do that, if you have 2, 3, 4 friends that you can get to take a bite with you, that journey is so much better because, we often forget the good times. It's the times that we suffer and times that things are hard that we remember the most. And as I look back at just my military career, I've got a handful of guys that we had to work in some really bad environments, really bad situations, but we did it together. And now those are some of the best memories that I've got. So,
Yeah, that's great. We've got just a few minutes left. Chris, I'm curious, what is your plan for the future in terms of your career? What would you like to accomplish?
well, it's hard to beat what I'm doing because I often think about that. I'm flying an EC 130, B4 and a T2, which they are very good and very comfortable helicopters. And I'm flying tours in Hawaii, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Um, I don't know. I think my next thing after this might be to just relax.
Good.
I mean, this is a pretty good gig.
It is.
So,
Maybe you'll be in the reboot of Magnum PI, and we'll see you wearing
yeah,
that red shirt. We
yeah.
also wear red at SUU. We also wear red on Friday. So I didn't know
Oh,
where that came from, but I appreciate that reference.
yep, yep.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you for your time, your insights. Thank you for your service in the military, and thank you for being a exemplary SUU alum. I learned a lot. I didn't know we share a building with aviation, and I've learned more about aviation than in this last hour than I have in the last few months. So, thank
Yeah,
you for
yeah.
the insight.
You're welcome.
Um,
Yeah, it's a great program. Again, I watched it from the very beginning, and yeah, I think we had four R44s at the time, and yeah, to see where it's at now, that's awesome. I've
cool.
known Mike Maurer, Ryan DeJong, Rich Cannon, a lot of the guys who helped establish that, along with Julie Maurer, and yeah, we had a
Yeah.
great
And
group of people.
Benson just said we have 18 now, 22 helicopters total. So.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fantastic. And we just heard yesterday that the aviation program got a $500,000 investment from the state legislature. So,
Oh, that is awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
good things are happening there. So,
yep,
anyway,
yep.
well, thank you for your time to all our listeners. Next week we have Kit Chatham, who's a professor in our music technology program and a former drummer with Cirque du Soleil
Hmm.
in Vegas, and has also done some work for Disney Cruise Line. So I think that would be really interesting to hear about his journey in the musical world, and especially in working with Cirque du Soleil. So Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Chris, we hope to see
Uh,
you at Cedar City sometime soon.
yeah,
Ted?
for the aviation students, although I'm not a big social network guy, I do get stuff over Facebook Messenger. And if they have any particular questions, they're more than welcome to reach out over Facebook Messenger. So
Okay. What about LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn too. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
I
right.
saw. Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to get some people connecting with you. So,
Okay.
oh,
Yeah.
someone just posted it.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks,
All righty.
Chris.
All
See
right.
ya.
Thanks.